Okay, and welcome back, students who are taking Math for Business and Finance and Math Applications. Chapter 6, Drill Problems, Odd Number Problems, and we were all the way down to 6-47. Okay, all right. Again, my thinking, um, here we're asking to solve the following problems. Be sure to show your work, round to the nearest hundredth or hundredth of a percent as needed. So, um, 777 is 70% of what? Okay. So if I think about this, this is my what. I don't know how much that is. And if this here is my 770, and that is 70%, okay, that means my how much this whole thing has to be greater than 770. Okay. Well, how do I do that? Okay, well, if I take 770 and I divide by 70%, okay, that's going to give me a number that's greater than 770. Remember, if I take 770 and multiply it by 70%, I'm going to get a number smaller than 770 because I'm taking a 70% of the 770, and that's not what I'm doing here. Okay, so I end up dividing by 70%. Okay? So um, of what? All right, anyway, so let me just do the math. All right, 70%, I'm moving the decimal place to the left, so I end up with 0.7. So I end up with 770 divided by 0.7. And if I do the math, divided by 0.7, I end up with 1100. And that's my answer. Okay? Now, again, um, if I wanted to use the formula, I would be looking more along the lines of my base would be equal to my portion over the rate. Okay, and my portion would be, obviously the 770, and my rate would be the 70%, okay, in order to find the base. Ends up being the same math. Okay, so that's it for that problem. Okay, 49, 6-49. What percent of 150 is 60? Um, Pay attention to this one very carefully because a lot that you have to do, like anyone who ends up taking accounting, um, or whether it's from a financial or managerial aspect, ends up with the same type of problem. What we're being given here is it's asking us for the percent, but we're being given two decimal numbers, two whole numbers. So if I have what percent of 150 is 60? So if I have this as 150 and I'm thinking about this as being 60, this I need could be a percentage. Remember, this is going to be 100%. Okay? And I'm trying to figure out what percent this portion is. Okay, so in order to do that, I'm going to take my 60% and divide it by the 150. Okay, and if I do the math on that, I end up with, let's see here. All right, so that's 15 into 60 into 6.0, so that goes 4 times. So I end up with 40%. Okay, um, do the math, 60 divided by 150. Okay, so that's 150 can't go into 60, into 600, that's 4, so that's 600, and so that's 0.4, and I move the decimal place over 1, 2, right? So that's how I ended up with 40%. Now, for the formula, yes, I'm going to end up with the rate, because I'm looking for the percentage, is equal to the portion over the base. And so my portion, in this case here, it kind of like works out in that I'm looking for 60 as my portion, and my base, the whole amount, is 150. And I'm looking for the rate, okay? So in this particular case, this using the formula actually works, but um, you know, again, I'm not going to be memorizing a lot of formulas, and for me, I'm just going to use a little bit more of a logic and common sense, okay? So that's how I arrive at that answer. Oh, and the other reason why, I'm sorry, let me erase this just a little bit. The reason why you want to pay attention, and I had mentioned this about about accounting. Okay, when you're doing a lot with accounting, what you have is you have numbers. Okay, let me say this was my sales. Okay, and 100 is my sales, and let's say it costs me $40 as my cost, and that means I had a profit of $60, and this would be known as my gross profit. Okay, these are in number formats. Okay, but yet when it comes to accounting and you have to do some kind of analysis, having numbers to a certain extent doesn't help you. Okay, because it's hard to judge and guess as to what's better, especially when you're comparing two different things. I mean, let's say I took the numbers 120, then I made this 45, and this is 5, and that's 875. Okay, um, if I'm going to ask you um, which one as a percentage. Now remember, let's say I'm an investor and I get two different sets of financial statements here, and I'm looking at this. Well, yeah, I made more money here as a gross profit versus the 60 here, but is that a better value for my dollar? What I need to do is I need to convert them into percentages and work with the percentages, because even though I might have to put in more money, you know, I can get a greater percentage, or I can put in less money and get a greater percentage. It's all about my return on investment, and my return on investment ends up being a percentage. So if I end up with, in this case here, this is 60%, because 60 divided by 100 gives me 60%. But if I take 75 and I divide it by 120, I end up with 62.5%. So yes, in this particular case, this instance, this is better. Okay, but let's change that scenario and make that, let's call this 110 instead. And I'll keep this at 45, and let's see what happens here. So I end up with 5, from 10 is 6, okay, and if I have 65 divided by 110, now I end up with, 65 divided by 110, okay, um, that gives me 59%. Okay, so even though here in this scenario, let me erase all of this so it looks a little bit easier. I'm making these numbers up as I'm going along, but I'm just trying to point this out, that you need to pay attention to this, especially because here I have a scenario where I have 110 in sales and my cost is 45, and I end up with $65 gross profit. Okay, if I, looking at these numbers, yeah, my gross profit, I'm making $5 more. Okay, but is that a better deal? I don't know. I need to be able to convert those into percentages. Okay, and when I convert them into percentages, I'm taking 60 divided by 100, and I end up with 60% over here. And over here I have 65 divided by 110. Well, that ends up only being 59%. So even though I'm getting $5 more in gross profit, I'm getting a higher return on my investment, over here, right? So even though I'm making $5 more over here, my better deal is to put my money here, because I get a greater return on the investment. I get 60 versus the 59. I'm just pointing that out because of this particular question. what percent is 150, what percent of 150 is 60. Um, you'll see this all happen all the time in accounting when you're trying to do analysis, okay? But for those like that are doing the math applications, you're probably sitting there thinking, well, I'm never going to do this, okay? A little bit later in the book you will, okay, in this math book, okay? So, all right, 6-51. Okay, so let's see what this problem says. All right, complete the following table. All right, so I have a product, a smartphone, and I have a selling price in 2013 and 2014. So in 2013, my price was 100, and 2014, my price was 120. So the amount of the decrease or increase, well, obviously that was an increase of $20. Okay. Now, the percent change to the nearest hundredth as needed. Okay. Well, if I'm increasing the price by $20 and my base, the number that I have to go by, I don't want to be looking at the 2014, right? Because that's what I'm going to. I have to go from where I'm coming from, and that's the 2013 prices of the 100. So I'm dividing 20, the increase, by the 100, which was my previous price, and I end up with 20%. Okay, that's 20% there, right? Again, you know, this here is just using a little bit of common sense. Okay, yeah, I can decide, how much is my increase or decrease. That was easy, $20, because 120 minus 100. But now when I'm talking about the percentage and change, and some students get tripped up on this, and this is why I'm going over this again, they're able to figure out the 20. But now the question becomes, do they use the 100 or they use the 120? Well, think of it from this perspective. Back in 2013, you had the price was 100. You don't know what the price is going forward, but you do know that over the course of time, over the course of that year, when you hit 2014, it's going to be something else. Well, that's why we're using the 100. We're going to divide by 100, and over the course of that year, as the price changed, when it changed by $20, that's why we put the 20 in the numerator, okay? And then we divide by that 100. We can't use the 120, right? And that will give us the 20%, okay? So if you have any questions on that, definitely feel free to call them and speak with an instructor or contact us via email, okay, by clicking on, contact us from your My Courses page. And with that, we're done with the drill problems, and we'll be moving on into the word problems.